Bienvenidos a Colombia Antigua. La historia es para compartirla sin egoísmo. Es por eso que cada video tiene el enlace y la información de dónde fue descargado. Esperamos que los videos y la información sean útiles para usted.
They are children of darkness, thrown away by a whole society. They've been shot, set on fire, shunned by nearly everyone, except one man, one source of hope.
And you cannot let them stay on the sewers, dying like rats.
Tonight, Colombia's abandoned children, and the only man melting.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer in New York, Sam Donaldson in Washington, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Jay Shadler, and John Quinones. This is Prime Time.
There are 5,000 children on the streets of Bogota, Colombia, and hundreds of them live in a kind of hell on earth. They live in the sewage tunnels that run beneath the streets of the city, and as John Quinones discovered, they have nothing, nowhere to turn except for one man, one ray of light in an otherwise bleak and very dangerous world.
Long past midnight, he trudges through a river of waste, searching for life beneath the streets of Bogota.
When I went inside of the sewers, I saw the darkness of the place, the stench of the excrement, and big rats walking up and down, and sometimes you think it's a cat or a dog. It's big rats.
The lonely voice in the darkness belongs to Jaime Jaramillo.
They live over there.
Suddenly, they begin to emerge from the darkness, the forgotten children of Colombia, a secret society of 200 abandoned boys and girls whose survival depends on how high they can keep their heads above the human waste.
Sometimes it smells so bad that it makes me sick.
Sandra and her boyfriend Juan have lived in a hole on the side of this sewer for more than a year. She is 16 years old and 2 months pregnant.
I'm expecting a baby and I'm very weak. That's why I get sick.
We ask, why don't you get out of here?
Because we have nowhere else to go.
They are the poorest of the poorest.
Dr. Augusto Perez is director of clinical psychology at Colombia's Los Andes University.
They are a part of a subculture. They are at the lowest level of extreme poverty we have seen in this country.
How can people live in this? I don't know how or why. Because this is waste, this is garbage.
Jaime Jaramillo is 34 years old, married, the father of 2. He's a geophysicist who makes $250,000 a year finding oil in Latin America for some of the world's biggest petroleum companies. But a comfortable lifestyle, he says, isn't everything.
I will never be happy just making money now.
And so, when the sun goes down in this city of 6 million, Jaime can be found collecting the food and the clothing, which he then distributes to the children of the sewers.
Fun. When I saw these kids, you have to do something. You cannot let them stay on the sewers, dying like rats.
The sewer system stretches like a maze for almost 3,000 miles under the streets of Bogota. These are caverns of suffocating stench and filth, a contaminated breeding ground for all kinds of infectious diseases, from typhoid fever to polio, from tuberculosis to hepatitis. It's hard to imagine the kind of desperation that would drive anyone, young or old, to live down here.
People bother us outside. Here we feel safe from everyone.
They are called gamines, Spanish for urchins. Most are abandoned children or runaways who survive on society's leftovers. As ugly as it may appear, the children say the sewers are their only refuge from the violence of a cold world outside. Over the past 2 years, vigilante groups, with the support of Colombia's national police, have mounted a cleanup campaign. They've allegedly killed dozens of children, the so-called disposable ones.
A hell of a lot of people seem to think that this is a necessity.
Timothy Ross is a freelance photographer who took these pictures of a mass slaying of street children near downtown Bogota.
One of the policemen there, one of the uniformed police, said to me, "This is no longer the cleanup campaign, this is what we call the rehabilitation program." And he nudged a corpse with his boot and said, "Look, this one's rehabilitated, he's never going to steal again."
They put the gun here on your head, or they stick it in your mouth.
These boys told us police officers often burn the children's belongings, or even worse. This young man was set on fire, Jaime says, by the police.
They go and open the cap of the sewer, put it petrol, fire, and burn all of them.
The National Police say the sewer children are victims of their own violence.
Sometimes they have fights among themselves and they blame the police. These are children who don't want to be rehabilitated. They like the streets.
11-year-old Alejandro disagrees. He's lived in the sewers for half of his life.
Everyone says we're going to become criminals, but they should realize that we could also be a success if someone will help us. We steal only because we have to eat.
They also steal to support their drug habits. Like 14-year-old John, most of the children of the sewers are hooked on bazuco, a cheap, crude, and addictive form of crack cocaine.
I've been doing it for a long time. It helps me forget everything.
Everybody knows that this is happening, but in a country like ours, with so many problems, I think that sometimes the whole population become completely indifferent.
To understand all that indifference, you must first realize that Colombia has a long and dark tradition of violence. This country now has the highest murder rate per capita in the world. The public has become so cynical of corrupt courts and judges that even the most respectable Colombians would rather rely on a do-it-yourself style of justice.
That leaves the homeless virtually defenseless, shunned by society, ignored by government officials.
How many gamines have you taken off the streets?
I wouldn't, no.
Dr. Ana Sanz de Santa Maria is director of the government agency that is supposed to protect homeless children.
But you don't venture into the sewers to pull them out?
No, we don't do that.
The conditions are pretty terrible down there.
The conditions are very difficult, and we are doing our best to contribute to eradicate this situation.
I don't think so. That's a real lie, I would say. Not at all. They didn't do anything.
And so Jaime ventures into the sewers alone, wearing a wetsuit in case he falls into high water, and carrying a first aid kit to help mend those injuries of the street.
Jaime, if you did not give these kids care, who would take care of them?
That's a good question. They die on the street.
This all began one Christmas night, 17 years ago, when Jaime saw a young homeless girl run after an empty toy box in heavy traffic.
And as soon as the little girl picked up the box, a big truck hit her, killed her, and as soon as I saw that broken body laying out on the street, I realized what I was born to do, to help the street children. It's so sweet, no?
He built 3 houses for the homeless through a foundation called Children of the Andes. 300 former street kids now receive free meals, clothing, health care, and an education. Half of the foundation's expenses are paid for by private donations. The other half comes out of Jaime's pockets. The kids, he says, are part of his extended family. Behind every one of these children, there's a tragic story of neglect. 11-year-old Claudia was born with Down syndrome. Her family made her carry hot water tanks on her back.
They use her as a mule. And when the water get out, burn all her back and her legs. It was terrible.
This baby was born in the sewer. His parents were drug addicts.
They gave the baby glue, sniff glue, and then they don't feel hungry. Boys, the girls, tender, love.
This is his dream house, a sprawling complex he'd like to build someday for 1,000 children. But with no government backing, it remains just a distant dream, especially for those still in the sewers.
It makes me so sad to see so many children left out in the cold. Children who have never known happiness. Where are the parents who brought them into this world? Have they forgotten that they too were children once?
The parents may have forgotten, but not Jaime Jaramillo.
How long will you continue doing this?
Forever. Forever, as far as I am alive. Forever. Buenas noches. Adiós. Adiós, amigo.